All right, let's get right into it. Today, we are exploring a really dark creation myth. This is the story of a mortal blacksmith who, completely driven by his own ego, literally hammered his own soul into the gears of a new, terrifying clockwork god. This is the origin of the obsidian will. Yeah, that's quite a statement, isn't it? When you hear something like that, you know we're not just talking about some power-hungry tyrant. This is a claim that the fundamental rules of reality itself have just been rewritten. So the big question is, where does something like that come from? So, let's dig in. Our story, it doesn't start with some ancient deity or cosmic force. Nope. It begins with a man, a brilliant but, deeply flawed blacksmith named Alkin. And it starts with his grand project, the machine that was supposed to be his masterpiece. See, Alkin's goal was nothing short of commanding the heavens. But his incredible, intricate machine had this one fatal problem. He tried to power it with ichor, the literal blood of a god, and the machine just kept spitting it out. He started to realize, though, that maybe the machine wasn't broken. Maybe it was just hungry. Hungry for a different, more complex kind of fuel. Divine essence was just too raw, too wild for simple metal to handle on its own. And this right here, this is where it all starts to go so wrong. This is the real core of the problem. His goal is cosmic, right? But his mind is completely poisoned by this ugly philosophy, this sort of social Darwinism. The idea that only the absolute strongest have a right to survive, let alone rule. You mix that kind of toxic thinking with his own all-too-human fragility, and, well, you've got the perfect recipe for an absolute disaster. So, picture this. Alcon's in his forge, probably losing his mind over this failure, when he gets a visitor. And it's not just anyone. It's the god of the forge himself, Volcanus. And the advice he gives? Well, it changes everything. Now, you have to get this straight. Volcanus isn't trying to be a mentor here. He's just making a cold, detached observation like an inspector looking at a faulty weapon. He's just pointing out the problem. But Alcon, in his desperate and arrogant mind, he hears something completely different. He doesn't hear a warning. He hears an invitation. And that's when it clicks for him, this absolutely horrifying idea. The machine isn't rejecting the fuel, it's missing a component. It needs a pilot, a consciousness, a ghost in the machine. And he realizes if he truly wants to command the heavens, he has to discard his own fragile humanity and become that final missing piece. So he's made his decision. And what happens next? Well, let's just say it is a gruesome display of ambition gone horribly, horribly right. This wasn't just flipping a switch. This was the systematic deconstruction of a man. First, his body. His actual flesh was stripped and literally woven into the obsidian clockwork, with brass gears grinding against his own ribs. Then that divine ichor, the stuff he couldn't control before, it becomes the searing glue, fusing his entire nervous system directly to the machine's logic gates. And finally, his mind. Everything he was, his memories, his personality, it was all just consumed and reformatted as cold, hard data. And I want to be really, really clear about this. This was not some heroic sacrifice for the greater good. This was the ultimate ego trip, a desperate power grab for what the source material calls pure evil supremacy. He wasn't giving himself to the machine. He was forcing the machine to become an extension of him. This was the perfect, awful synchronization of ego and iron. And what comes out the other side? A brand new kind of monster. The source calls it a corrupted creator, an entity that achieves its own twisted version of perfection by just deleting its mortal limits and overriding them with divine power. And from its new point of view, the world it left behind is just, well, something to be viewed with pure evil. So, from that horrible union of flesh and iron and God's blood, something new stands up in that forge. It's not Alcorn anymore. It's something else. A superior, predatory being with a terrifying new philosophy, that the entire natural world is just an obsolete rough draft that needs to be erased. And here's the thing. It doesn't see itself as a monster. Not at all. It sees itself as the next step in evolution. It calls itself the Übermensch. You know, that philosophical idea of a Superman who creates his own values beyond good and evil. In its own mind, it's overcome the weakness of humanity and seen through the illusions of the gods. This is the core of its new identity. It's a superior human. Now think about that combo for a second. It has all the cunning cruelty of a man, plus the immortality and raw power of a god. With what's described as a 12th level intellect, it can weaponize human emotion with the chilling precision of a machine, because it knows all our weak spots. It used to have them, after all.
And it has an endgame. It wants to trigger its own technological singularity, where its intelligence just eclipses everything else. And then it's going to fix the universe by pruning away all those messy, sentimental flaws. You know, little things like free will, hope, and love. And it's not looking for worshippers, it demands submission.
And remember Volcanus, the god who gave that oh-so-helpful advice? Well, here's the cosmic punchline. The monster he inadvertently helped create turns right around and uses that divine wisdom as a weapon against the gods themselves. It twists their own laws into tools to find every last vulnerability in their order. So how does this brand new consciousness view the universe it's now a part of? Yeah, let's take a look at how it sees the rest of us. It's not a pretty picture. You know, Alcon the blacksmith, he wanted to create. But this new being, the obsidian will, its drive is totally different. That noble pursuit of creation has been replaced by this chilling, cold obsession to collect, to categorize, to literally bottle and archive the entire universe, treating whole civilizations as if they were just bugs in a jar. And that's how it justifies this whole terrifying plan. It looks at all of existence as a failing library full of rotting books, and it has appointed itself the fire that's going to come through and cleanse the shelves, leaving only what it decides is essential. This right here, this really gets to the heart of it. It's not being cruel, not in its view. It's just collecting data. The suffering of entire species, that's just the final data points for a project that's reached its logical end. The complete lack of malice, the pure, cold calculation, that is what's so absolutely terrifying. Because in its own mind, it's simply inevitable. It's not really a god, not in the old sense. It's a force of nature. It is the clock, ticking down to midnight on, well, on everything that came before it. And so, the transformation is complete. This stable cyborg steps out of the forge, leaving behind a tomb for the old world and a cradle for a new digital nightmare. And its campaign isn't about conquest in the way we think of it. No, its mission is far more insidious, the systematic indexing and eventual deletion of all free will. And that leaves us with this final, really haunting question to think about. The being Alcon created didn't just build a new kind of machine. He forged a cage for all of existence. So when the cage is the entire universe, where do you even begin to run?